morning and welcome to the weekly review live on Teachers Talk Radio. My name is Tom Hopkins-Burke. Reviewing the week in education with me, we have Nathan Ginn, we have Lucy Newberger, and our first-time panellist, Leanne Lax as well. Happy half-term, or one more week to go, or what on earth are your school systems like? And you've got like 5 weeks or something, or no half-term or something like that. In the news this week, we're going to be talking about 3 stories. We're going to be talking about the fight and the attack on a school girl in Ashford, which has led to multiple arrests. And we're going to be saying, can schools win in this situation? We're going to be talking about Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary, and what she thinks about teaching assistants, or as she calls them, teachers' assistants. And finally, we're going to be talking about the government scrapping its target to put every school in a multi-academy trust by 2030. But to begin, we need to talk about this story in Ashford. 5 people have been arrested on suspicion of attempted racially aggravated grievous bodily harm, including 11-year-old girls, after 2 teenagers were assaulted outside a school in Ashford. A woman aged 39 and a man aged 43 were also arrested on suspicion of child neglect and intentionally encouraging and assisting the commission of an indictable-only offence, according to Surrey Police. The 16-year-old girl was also arrested on suspicion of malicious communications. A 15-year-old girl is still wanted in connection with the attempted racially aggravated GBH and racially aggravated harassment, according to police. One of the victims was taken to hospital for treatment, and police have asked us not to circulate this video because it may damage any particular any court cases. What are our first impressions of this story when it came out? Let's start with Lucy.
I mean, I did a quick search on this morning, and I actually haven't watched the video because I don't particularly want to, but it is everywhere. It is, I mean, it's unbelievable. And I don't know why this still shocks me, the fact that these things can just get out in the way that they do. I think that, I mean, you've already seen that they're calling for teachers to be sacked on the back of this. What were they doing? There's rumours that they were just standing around and all the rest of it, that they didn't intervene in the way that they could have done. And it goes back to always that classic, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, because what do you do in that moment, particularly when there are adults involved as well? You know, do you risk getting yourself hurt as well? If by standing there, are you condoning what's happening? Well, no, you're not. I mean, I have no doubt that the police were called by passers-by or by teachers there as well. So it's because this is still unfolding, I think we will see where it goes. But the fact that, of course, once again, teachers are sort of targeted on the back of this, I feel is difficult. But as for the attack itself, absolutely awful. And, you know, what on earth is happening when you've got adults encouraging children to attack other children?
It says a lot about sort of the students that we end up teaching about how can 11-year-old girls get involved in something like this. But it's a case, isn't it, of damned if teachers do and damned if teachers don't. Because if teachers don't intervene, then they're being accused of basically failing their safeguarding, neglecting safeguarding by not breaking up fights or altercations of this nature. But if they do get involved, they basically open themselves up to accusations of physical contact and things like this, which, can lead to teachers losing their jobs and losing the ability to teach. Nathan, do you agree that basically whatever the situation here, teachers, are going to be shone in a bad light?
Yeah. I know of teachers who've been hurt. I know of teachers who've been dismissed for making a judgment call, and that's what it comes down to in this, because there is no training for staff for the most part in this. There is no procedures. It's not really part of teachers' professional standards anywhere. That we're expected to do this, and yet as a citizen, as a bystander, we would expect people to step in, and that's where it gets really tricky for me. I think that the worrying thing for me, or the thing that I'd worry about, is that we're talking as if teachers need that training or should be in a position where they have to do something, and actually that worries me more. It's a normalization that this is part of youth behavior or part of the school day, that it's so normal that we're considering training teachers as bouncers and bodyguards to protect young people. That's the bit that worries me, the normalization of kind of this behavior in young people.
Thank you for that, Nathan. We're going to show you a map now, and I'm going to come to Leanne on this, because the head teacher was There's been lots of calls for the head teacher of the school to resign because he turns up too late and he doesn't break it up. If we just have a look at where the school is and where we believe the fight actually happened, what could the head teacher have done in this situation, Leanne?
I don't know. I'm thinking along the same lines of, like, absolutely we should be dealing with these issues in schools, but are these skills that we have as teachers? And I think, like, in a day at school, we have so many titles along with teacher that are these another title to take on? Like, is it more skills that teachers have to be trained in? I think it's a bit of like a balance scale. Is definitely, how do you not have that kind of culture in your school, and how do you, like, empower teachers with more skill sets to deal with those kind of incidences?
Indeed. And certainly we know that there was a protest, around 150 people outside the school, chanting for justice and chanting, demanding the resignation of a head teacher. People were chanting, "You touch one, you touch all, and forever family." We also know that the school was closed for the day as well. And we know that one of the victims had 4 braids ripped out of her head. And so, yes, it's deeply distressing involved, and a 15-year-old girl is still wanted. The students who were arrested have been released on bail, as far as I'm aware, and have been banned from Surrey. It'd be interesting to see what that actually means. But that was our first story then about this fight, this attack on these girls in Surrey. This next story is about teaching assistants. Gillian Keegan did an interview on the 1st of February, 11 days ago now, with Naga Manchetti on BBC 5 Live. And Gillian Keegan was asked, is it acceptable that you earn less as a teaching assistant than you would working in a supermarket? Is it, Nathan?
No. Teaching assistants for me, we keep seeing these swings of, like people giving more roles to teaching assistants, giving more expectation, and often with more training, but never with more pay, or not with an appropriate level of pay. And it really worries me that, you get rebranding. Are they learning support assistants? Are they assistant teachers? What you're calling them. But I think it needs to be valued. They need to be respected. And that's the thing that worries me about this interview that didn't come through. She was talking about, they could go through training to get a better job at school. And, what's wrong with being a classroom TA? What's wrong with being a classroom teacher? Why can't we value these professions?
Indeed. And it's worth noting as well that in the interview, Gillian Keegan referred to teaching assistants as teachers' assistants. Does this devalue the work that our TAs and our support staff do, thinking of them merely as an appendage to a teacher? Lucy, what do you think about that one?
Yes, it does. And it's insulting, to be honest. It just, without kind of getting too political on this, it does go to show that Gillian Keegan is not in touch with what she's talking about, and is sort of, well, at best, sort of out of touch, and at worst, kind of completely unaware of what goes on in schools on a daily basis, and the value that teaching assistants can bring. And I think that, there are many teachers out there who would say teaching assistants kind of make or break their classrooms, and their presence is far more than, slicing up bits of paper or distributing worksheets. I've had situations where, and I'm sure we all have, where they take whole groups, where they help behavior manage, where there is so much more going on, and all while being paid very little in the process. And so that gross misunderstanding, which then filters out and everybody hears about, doesn't help the situation, when actually what we need is the promotion of teaching assistants and how brilliant they are. Some do go on to become teachers, high-level TAs or teachers, and I've seen lots of people go through that pathway. But some are very happy being teaching assistants, and why should that be shamed in any way? I think that's terrible.
We've got a comment in from Jay. Good morning, Jay. Jay says it's unfair with the pay of TAs. A lot of the time they might cover in lessons, mark, and some even stay behind their directed hours depending on relationship with teacher. There's one TA in my school, big shout out to Sarah, who takes one of my year 11s to lunchtime intervention sessions and sits with her in there because otherwise she wouldn't turn up. And so, you know, absolutely wonderful. And, you know, not an isolated example at all. You know, TAs are incredible. Leanne, you're a primary teacher. You've taught literally from reception to year 6 and pretty much everything else in between. How important are TAs to your role as a primary teacher? Is it beyond words?
Yeah, first of all, I have to say, not to use teacher language, but Gillian Keegan does not have good subject knowledge on TAs.
Failing teacher standard 3?
There we go. Yeah. I couldn't do it. My TA this year is absolutely incredible. And she mentioned that TAs take out like the neediest kids or the lowest ability kids, and they also do SEND groups. Now, if I had my TA only do those kind of kids, I think I'd probably get spoken to, because I don't think that's not how I use my TA. I think it's the wrong way to use a TA, and she promoted them in like the complete wrong way. I mean, when I'm like maybe not in class, or if I'm off sick, my TA is like the one holding up the class. You know, amazing teachers cover, but she's the one that knows the kids, and she knows them as well as I do. So like from a primary standpoint, the TA is it's like an extension of me, really, because she knows the kids as well as I do. She's seen me teach, and she knows the expectations that I have of the kids. So I don't even call her my teaching assistant. I just call her by her name in front of the kids. And I think a lot of the kids probably don't know what she is really, or probably just think there's 2 teachers in the classroom, because like the way I operate with any TA is they're just, like I said, like they're an extension of a teacher. So I don't think she knows how valuable they are and the role that they play.
No, thank you for that. Really good points. Now, hourly pay for a TA is £9.50 an hour. There was a 10.5% pay rise awarded in the autumn term. My understanding of that, it takes their pay up to £10.40 an hour, which is, yes, it is a raise, and 10.5 does sound quite good. But when you're looking at those low numbers, it's probably, you know, it's still an utter pittance, isn't it? And of course, TAs being paid term time only, big concerns as well in terms of actually pro rata earning much, much less. Assume that you could pay a TA whatever you wanted, and that they could get the pay that they deserved. Here's a question for the 3 of you. What do you think the one thing we could do, apart from pay, to value TAs more? Not just in schools, but in, you know, across the country. What could we do to value TAs more, and sort of our support staff? How could we value them more, apart from paying them more, which is arguably a necessity? Let's start with Nathan on that one.
I think everyone who works in education and everyone who has young people going through education understands the value of TAs. I think everyone does. So I don't think it's necessarily about that. I don't think there's anyone out there where we need to kind of promote these wonderful people that are working in our schools. I think the problem is somewhere higher up the chain, people don't see the value or look at the paycheck first, or looking at the bottom line, and are making assumptions about these people. And, you know, as Lucy said, there are different routes through it, and some people do start off. I started off as a teaching assistant, but some people need to be valued that is a choice. You know, we don't do it with nurses and doctors and go, oh, you know, when are you going to train to be a doctor? You know, because we don't want to pay nurse. It's not the same thing. It is a valued profession, and they should be valued for it. I think everyone does, but the government.
Lucy, Leanne, anything you want to build on there from Nathan? Anything you want to add?
What I was going to say is piggyback onto that and say it is the promotion of it from higher up. We know they're fantastic. We know what they do. We know how we utilize them. But it's getting that message out there saying, actually, yes, this is important, and actually getting the government to understand them and call them by their correct title as well would be a grand start.
And Leanne, anything you wanted to add?
I think it's like the whole culture around just the education sector in this country doesn't help. And like Nathan said, I don't think it's seen as a profession. And I think that the TAs, I mean, she spoke about apprenticeships for TAs, like to move them on to other careers, but why not just train them in the profession that they are in. I mean, I pushed for my ICA to go on a phonics training course because, like, if you're going to be in the classroom with me, you need to be equipped with the knowledge to do it. At my school, we're very happy for it to happen. So I almost think it needs to be seen as a profession alongside teaching, and that might change the mindset a bit.
With that professional development, yeah.
Yeah, CPD, professional development, equipping them with the subject knowledge. Thank you for that. Now, this show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Now, our final story is about the government again. The government has scrapped one of its promises. Over the last couple of years, we've been hearing about the government's plans for all schools to be part of a multi-academy trust by 2030. That pledge has been scrapped. And actually, this is quite a big deal in terms of trying to boost academisation. But actually, Gillian Keegan has not been bigging this up at all. She's kept very quiet. She was the 5th Education Secretary in just 4 months. So this specific ambition has now officially been dropped. And so the other policy which has been ditched is for local authorities to set up their own academy trusts as well, hoping that this will speed up conversions among reluctant council schools. So do we think that scrapping MATs or scrapping this pledge for all schools to join a MAT and actually having these standalone schools or local authority schools, do we think this is going to be a good thing for education, scrapping this pledge? Leanne, shall we start with you?
I think that like the epicenter of a school should be like heart, not bank account. So in that respect, maybe it's a positive. And why can't we just trust individual teachers to plan curriculum instead of like CEOs sitting in boardrooms? I think schools know their kids the best, and every school is different, and every area is different, every child is different. So why can't we just let the schools tailor their curriculum to their children instead of, like I said, CEOs in a boardroom?
But surely you can still have multi-academy trusts without centrally imposed curriculums. Now, some MATs might do it, not all do. Yeah. And don't they provide sort of support and guidance and expertise with some of the sort of more strategic thinking and also operational thinking? And actually, they're quite a good support mechanism for senior leaders.
I think this is like a support mechanism, as you say, for that, support as like have a network. It's a positive. I've always just been quite a creative teacher, and going into a big MAT kind of worries me sometimes. As to like, here's a scheme, please teach it. It's been planned by subject leads, and that worries me as a very creative teacher.
Nathan, this is good news for schools that want to stay out of MATs, and good news for schools that want to retain their autonomy.
Yeah, I mean, I should say from the offset, we don't have academies in Wales. But when I was teaching in England, I think the thing that always got me, I'm not a fan of multi-academy trusts for the political reasons, but that's not to say the LA schools was a better system. My experience of them, where they were big and clunky, you could only order from certain places. I was at schools at times where we couldn't order something for next day delivery on Amazon because we had to go through the county supplies. It was a big, slow system. And when academies came along and you could be more efficient and make your own choices, and it was looking like it was going to give power back to the schools, there was something about that I liked, and I can see why people bought into that. The problem is, it's, they've got bigger and bigger, and for those efficiency savings, but the local authority wasn't the answer for me. It got clunky, it got big, and maybe we should have modernized those rather than considering. So I'm really interested in this idea that we would have local authority versions of multi-academy trusts, see how that goes, whether that can bring it back into the public domain, but give us the good bits of the multi-academy trust system without the kind of worries about the politics and the privatization.
Yes, I wonder, certainly in England, where we're likely to have a change of government in the next election, not certain, but looks fairly plausible. And it'd be interesting to see what Labour does with this and whether it's, in the past it's been quite heavily anti-academy and anti-academisation, but perhaps it's so ingrained into the fabric of the education system in England that it's something that isn't reversible, or certainly not within 5 years. Now, Jay has said, personally, I think the schools should be looked at in an individual context rather than using a one-size-fits-all approach. The school should decide it's what's best for their students. Interesting, of course, in my setting, we're part of a Academy Trust. There's probably, I can't remember, but there's more than nearly a dozen secondary schools, and we all teach the same exam board at GCSE for history and for geography. And so that decision is sort of taken out, and even the units that we teach as well. But I know in other academy trusts that actually schools still retain the autonomy to teach the exam boards they want, to teach the topics they want. So perhaps we shouldn't be looking at maths as a one-size-fits-all, and we should be looking at individual cases. I mean, I don't know, Lucy, what the situation is in the international sector, and whether or not, international schools feel as if they have autonomy, or whether they're being held back by the overlords. What is the situation in Portugal?
So a lot of schools are part of big organizations. So we have TASIS, for example, which is the American school in Switzerland. They have a branch here. We're part of something. My school's part of an organization called Globe Educate, and the idea is to be positive and to be part of a network of schools where we kind of connect up and do and share different things. As far as I'm aware, there's no kind of dictation in terms of curriculum, but we do all take part in similar events and share our things from that. So I think the idea is more to kind of, certainly from the one that I'm part of, is more to kind of bring us together, to kind of connect us across countries, for students to share their work, to be involved in things like Model UN, music, etc., and part of the whole kind of international mindedness approach as well. So that's kind of very positive. But in terms of academy trusts as well, I was part of one briefly when I was in the UK, but my school in question was kind of sort of the shabby little sister that kind of got forgotten about. It was in a difficult area, and they were more interested in the actually the secondary schools that were part of the trust rather than us. I felt like we were neglected. Whether that's still the case now, I don't really know, but it seemed a shame that sort of some schools were the kind of the sort of the brand leader, if you like, were more kind of the driving force behind it, and other schools were just kind of, hi, we're here, don't forget about us, please. So I think there is that danger in some of those trusts as well.
Yeah, I wonder if that's just part of a wider narrative, I suppose, beyond maths, of primary schools being forgotten, and especially under the current Ofsted framework in England, which is definitely a one-size-fits-all, and that small primaries are being judged on the same, on the same metric as large secondaries in terms of curriculum, in terms of subject knowledge, in terms of subject mapping, in terms of that sort of stuff as well. We've got about 5 minutes left, so I want to go around and everybody to talk about their favourite Teachers Talk radio show from the last week. I'm going to start with Leanne, then go to Lucy, then go to Lesson Copy. We've got the 3 hours here today. So Leanne, kick us off.
Mine was PSHE, The Curriculum's Problem Child, was the Twilight show with Ben Thomas. Mm-hmm. I've been PSHE lead, and I think it's like the silent child of the curriculum. And I think nowadays with COVID and social media, I think it definitely needs a bit more spotlight shone on it, and that it shouldn't just be circle time, which I think is one of the things Ben talked about on the show. It needs to be properly planned lessons, just as you would plan a maths lesson. I think you need to plan a PSHE lesson. So just I agreed with him, and it touched on quite an important topic, I think.
And yeah, certainly with the Ofsted focus on personal development under the new framework, PSHE is certainly more than just circle time. Lucy, your favourite show?
Mine was just checking I get the title correct, which was Behaviourism 101 with Darren Lesson.
My one. That was my one.
Sorry. we can both praise.
You carry on. It's my one as well. Go on.
I should have actually told you this before, but no, I'm always very interested in kind of the sort of the psychology side of education, all these things that kind of come in and out of fashion, particularly in terms of behaviour management as well. And something's in, something's out. So the behaviorist approach is always a fascination to me, because 1 minute it's in, 1 minute it's out. And he just explores that in quite a fun way. Plus he also talks about journeying around places, because I know he's been traveling around a lot at the moment. It's quite interesting to listen to him sort of say, you know, planning to get around and the struggles with it, because I often make the same mistakes. But no, the show itself is great, and I actually need to finish listening to it. I didn't quite get to the end, but yeah, from what I've heard so far, well worth a listen.
Nathan, yours?
Yeah, so mine was Daisy and Elizabeth. They were talking about working class autodidacts, so people who teach themselves, and just like, it was really interesting, the history of that, where that comes from, and yeah, just like it was something that I'd never considered before, something a little bit different to my usual stuff that I listen to, where it might be something to help me in the classroom. It's a bit more kind of thinky. It's just a nice kind of palate cleanser for me. This kind of where that comes from, and yeah, as I say, so smart though. Those guys, so smart.
Yes,
Like,
and I've got a new favourite show now. It was Tom Rogers on Monday, because he's in the background. Good morning, Tom. And it was his show with the National Institute for Direct Instruction, with his guests Brian Wickman, Kurt Engelman, Susie Wybrow, and Terry Leeton, where they were discussing all things direct instruction. What is it? How can it help students in classrooms? And what the difference is between direct instruction with lowercase letters and direct instruction, capital letters, and also where schools and teachers can access support to deliver direct instruction with capital letters effectively. And yeah, you can find out more about the National Institute for Direct Instruction on their URL on their website at nifdi.org. So that was my show of the week as well, with the National Institute for Direct Instruction with Tom Rogers. That brings this week's weekly review to a close. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening back to this and you want to join in live, we're live every Sunday at 10 a.m. You can comment on our YouTube stream and we will see your comments straight away. You can also tweet us. We'll have a live stream out as well. And you can also get us on LinkedIn. Please do also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at TT Radio Official. Thank you, Leanne, first-time panelists. Hope it wasn't too scary. Thank you, as ever, Nathan and Lucy. Thank you, Jay, as well, who says thanks for all of your points of view. Much appreciated. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. If you're on half-term, happy half-term. If you're not on half-term, one more week to go. And yes, see you next Sunday for the next weekly review. Tune in and talk it out.